For want of a nail, the shoe was lost. For want of a shoe, the horse was lost. For want of a horse, the rider was lost. For want of a rider, the message was lost. For want of a message, the battle was lost. For want of a battle, the kingdom was lost. And all for the want of a horse shoe nail. In the heartlands of Yorkshire Dales stands Midland Castle, the old home of infamous King Richard III, whose tragic death gave inspiration to this nursery rhyme. Except now we leave from the safety of the nursery and head towards the dark ruins, where the king is still hosting lavish feasts to those who dare to enter his court of midnight miracles. Many of those who had once stepped inside of his domain are not the same after they had returned. Some say that their imagination got better of them, while others stay silent about their experiences. But before you enter, take a good seat on your wall, so you don't have a great fall, and turn your back to the 21st century and front of me. This is his island in the Red Sea of Warring Roses. Who was King Richard and where did he came from? According to the English history, King Richard III was the last ruling monarch of the Plantagenet dynasty. He was the youngest son of Richard the Duke of York and Cecily Neville. As a child, Richard was small and fragile boy, and he wasn't expected to reach such heights as he did when he had grown to adulthood. The way how he came to sit on the English throne is controversial at best. In William Shakespeare's play, he is being casted as a villainous, bloodthirsty maniac who would not let anyone to stand on his way, or a classical nightmare monster which would hide in the closets and suffocate bad behaving children in their sleep. However, more recent studies imply that he was a brave soldier and a fair lord, who did act only for the best of his subjects. Every aspect in King Richard's appearance tells us a story of an extraordinary man, who had piercing blue eyes, beauty of nobility and slightly higher right shoulder, which grew to a full-sized hump during the Tudor times. His ruined castle has similar alluring semblance, especially at night, when the bare walls bathe in the moonlight. Local residents report of disembodied sounds and haunting music, which are still echoing through the castle grounds. Few brave souls had entered to his deserted halls after midnight, and they have been greeted by shadow figures and flying orbs of light. Despite seeing these kinds of visions, King Richard does not intentionally want to scare off his guests. After the person who had entered and respectfully asked the king's permission to come forward, Richard welcomes the guest and gestures him or her to come in. And what happens after that is being left unknown. Although he is mostly known for being the Britain's favorite villain, there are a number of real-life incidents which defy this definition. Two of the most famous ones of these kinds of cases were the stories of two young women called Catherine Williamson and Catherine Bassingbourn. In the year 1472, Richard condemned the men who had murdered the husband of Catherine Williamson, who was a mere commoner, and couldn't get justice to her late husband otherwise. At this time, Richard was just the Duke of Gloucester, but he had the means to deliver justice and he didn't tolerate injustice in any kind of form. Although the murderers were in the service of nobility and thus under the protection of their lord, they didn't escape from the verdict. Sometime during the late September of the year 1483, a young widow from the town of York asked the King's Aide. This young woman was about to lose her home to her deceased father's new wife Ellen, who thought to hand it over to her second husband's heirs. Again Richard intervened, twice for the favor of Bassingbourn. Unfortunately, the end result of this case remains unknown. In his first and last parliament, Richard passed major reforms to the England's justice system. In his acts, he stood firmly against illegal confiscation, corruption of the judges, general dishonesty and inequality. In the light of these evidence, we can say that King Richard created the foundations to the blind justice. Such high prince of principles had totally unworthy death in the hands of his enemies, but his desire to see justice served lives on. Even beyond his grave, he still reaches to those who are in need. Despite grand castle ruins as his home, Richard doesn't linger there for too long. Sometimes his restless spirit can be seen riding on horseback across the moors of Yorkshire. When he rides on a white Arabian horse, he will bring good news. If a black Frisian, his news are bad. But if he is wearing an armor, then there are troubled times ahead.